Hi, I'm Chef Gail Sokol and welcome to my kitchen. Today we're doing a killer combo, chocolate and raspberries in a tart. It's the perfect combination for spring, for summer, for any type of event you're going to have, even a romantic evening with somebody special. And it's so gorgeous and so impressive and yet so easy, you won't believe it. So we're going to get started with our crust. So I'm going to make my crust in the food processor. You can do it by hand if you want to with a pastry blender. This is really a pâte sucrée, and it's going to be flavored with a little cocoa powder. So it's going to be a chocolate crust, which is sort of different. I haven't made one of those in a while. This is 1 cup of all-purpose flour. I call AP flour. 1/4 cup of granulated sugar, and it's not that sweet, which is nice. I always give a little bang in the cup afterwards, I'm sorry. It's just my way to make a lot of noise. 3 tablespoons of unsweetened cocoa powder, not Dutch process. If you have Dutch process, it's not gonna do anything. So 3 tablespoons of any type of unsweetened cocoa powder. We're gonna give it a whirl around, just a little whirl. Whoop, just a little whirl. I get mixed up between my food processors. I have so many. No, I don't have so many. See? Now be careful when you whirl it around a little bit. Be careful because it creates cocoa dust and cocoa. Oh, just be careful. Sometimes it can get you. 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter. That's been cubed and it's hard. It's nice and chilled. And this is what actually is creating, you don't really want a lot of flakiness in this, but it will create a little flakiness. Now we're gonna whirl it around a little again until we get small pea-sized pieces. And you know my trick, because sometimes it flings out of the machine. We're just gonna pulse till we get pea-sized pieces, 8 to 10 pulses. Don't count, all right? And once we get about 8 to 10 pieces, we're going to add our egg yolk. That's only an egg yolk, 1 large egg yolk, all right? And about 1.5 tablespoons to 2 tablespoons of icy cold water. Notice it is icy cold water. And I'm just gonna put that all around. And then we're gonna take a look. We're gonna look with our eyes, we're gonna feel a little bit with our hands, and we're going to use our senses to see if we need a little more water. All right, so a little bit. We're just pulsing. You don't wanna overmix because you do want a tender crust. That's what all the butter's for. All right. Now, when I put my hands in it, if it doesn't gather together, I am going to add more water. And it's gathering together, but yeah, it could be a little better. So, another tablespoon of water. You're gonna use your eyes, you're gonna use your hands. They're your best tools to feel the dough. Give it another little whirl around, and pretty soon I'm gonna actually dump this mixture into a bowl so I can gather it together into a ball, and then I'm going to chill it. All right. So it's only going to look like little bits of, almost like a crumble. So don't get worried about that. You don't want to add too much water. All right. But I do want to add enough that it will hold together. All right. Get rid of that. And then I want to see. You see how I'm gathering it together? And it's holding together really nicely. And I see little bits of butter, and that's good. Little bits of butter means that you're going to get a little bit of flakiness, although this pastry, you're not going to get a whole lot of flakiness like you would like an apple pie. So don't worry about getting a lot of big chunks of butter in here. All right, so you see how I sort of wiped the bowl up, and it formed a dough. That is perfection. Actually, it's perfection for the baking world. I'm going to get some plastic wrap. I'm going to put my baby in for a little nap, maybe for about 20 minutes or so. Tuck the baby in, press the baby into a disc, See you back here in a little bit. So I took my baby out of the refrigerator, my dough, after I've let it rest for a little bit, for about maybe 20 minutes or so. You can even freeze it at this point, date it, label it, and use it another time. So I'm going to unwrap the baby. And I like to bake this in a false bottom tart pan, and I like to do it in a rectangular one. If you want to do it in a 9-inch round one, you can. This is why I recommend putting these on a sheet pan before you bake them. So I have sprayed this with nonstick cooking spray, and I'm going to set it on here, and we're going to bake this pastry blind, all right? And many of you know what that means. It's a crazy, crazy, crazy phrase. I have tried to look up the origins of it. If any of you know the origins, please reach out to me because I have no idea. So I'm going to use a little cocoa powder to roll this out because it is a cocoa chocolate flavored pastry and I don't want the streaks from the flour on it. We'll also give a nice little bittersweet taste to it. So just keep doing that. And we'll brush off the remainder. Because this false bottom tart pan is rectangular and it's not round, I'm going to roll it out and I may have to patch it. So I'm just going to roll what I can. You want to get it about 1/8 of an inch thick. You don't want it too thin. And then I'm just going to cut it and patch it, and it will patch together beautifully. You don't need water. You're just going to use your fingers. I'm telling you, your hands are your best tools. Sometimes people don't believe me. They'll say, I don't want to touch my dough. I don't want to touch it. That's the only way you can tell if it's ready. That's the only way you can tell if it is at the stage that you need it to be. All right? So your fingers are really important. All right, so if it rips a little bit, don't worry about it. Again, it patches up beautifully. I'm trying to get it about the length of the pan. And then we're going to line that pan with beans, first parchment paper and then beans to bake it blind, or pie weights. Some of you may have pie weights. I just took a bag or two of dried beans, and I'll show you what you do. It's super easy to do. If you've never baked a pie blind, it's quite exciting. I mean, it's not a big deal at all. I'm going to take my pastry brush. I'm going to get rid of this, as much of the cocoa powder as I can. All right, and again, this will be crackly and sort of break a little bit, but that's fine. That is fine. That's what pastry crusts do at times. So I'm just going to, matter of fact, I might even just cut it down the middle here and sort of lift it up and sort of fold it over. All right, and get rid of some of this. And then just pick it up and get it onto your pan. Again, if it breaks, no sweat. Don't worry about it. You're just going to patch it. It breaks all the time, and it breaks for everybody. It is a very unusual shape. You just want to get it on the sides as well. So make sure that it actually goes into the sides and up the sides. All right. Just make sure you don't have a huge blob of cocoa on the bottom, and if you do, you know what to do about it. Do the brushy thing. And then I'm just going to put it on here. And I'm just going to patch, push, 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 and patch the areas that have cracked. And then I'm going to go a little bit higher than I have to. And then I'm going to push down on the edges. The edges of these false bottom tart pans, they're beautiful, the fluted ones, and that's what you want. They're very sharp. So you can actually take your rolling pin and roll across it, and you can see it just breaks off. And then use this extra to patch the remainder and get right up on the sides. You don't want it too thin, but you also don't want it too thick, so we don't want it to stay doughy. So this is sort of real nice on the side. You see that? It's about between 1/8 and a little, slightly more than 1/8. And then don't stretch your dough. You want to fit it in gently And if some is a little bit thicker than other pieces, just push this off because you have a lot extra here, right? And we're not going to put it in the oven until it's just right. So make sure you don't have to crimp it, you don't have to do anything with these beautiful fluted pans, but you do have to make sure that the excess dough is off. It'll make getting it out of the pan a lot easier. All right, so you patch, and if you see over here, there's a little bit of metal showing. You're going to put a little bit of dough there, and you will have a little bit of dough left over. If you have some dough left over and you want to use it, you can actually bake it off as cookies. It's actually really delicious. It's almost like a little sugar cookie. Just sort of push it down with your hands or use the rolling pin trick. All right, and I have a little piece here that's got to be covered. All right, no worries. All right. And you just patch. And then you want to make sure everything is in the sides. I still see some areas that I want to get up. Take time to do this. Give yourself some time. And at this point, you could actually put this pan with this uncooked dough, unbaked dough, in your freezer and keep it until you want to actually bake the tart off. You would let it come to not room temperature, but you would refrigerate it first to thaw. All right, and then you could bake it off. Now I want to make sure everything is just right. You should see how impressive this looks when you serve it. It is unbelievable. And people know I'm a pastry chef, and they've accused me. They'll say, "Where'd you get that? That is like gorgeous." I'm like, "I made it." Silly gooses. Of course I made it. But again, all this hard work, make sure you put it on a sheet pan that fits it. All right, like a 15 by 10 sheet pan. So you see that? Nice, right? Get all your scraps off. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of parchment paper that I've pre-cut. I'm putting it inside and gently fit it in. Make sure there's some extra, all right? Gonna wash my hands real quick. I'm real quick. I hop around my kitchen real fast. So, well, if you're going to eat all these goodies, you got to stay in shape, right? So I'm hopping around. So here I am. I've put this parchment paper in there, and now I take my beans. These are black beans. You can use any beans you want, or pie weights. These beans I don't eat. These beans are just pie weights. You don't want to eat them. Do not eat them. They will not taste good. And you can reuse them. So I actually store them in a big container, or you can put them in a Ziploc bag, and you have them time after time, but you want to make sure that they are cool before you put them away. So I'm putting them right up to the sides. I've preheated my oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm going to bake this for about 12 minutes until it's just almost done on the bottom, and then I'm going to see you back here. So I just took my crust out of the oven. It had between 12 and about 15 minutes because I felt it needed a little bit longer. And the way you can tell is you gently lift up one piece of the parchment paper, and you can see it's slightly still underdone. And let me show this to you. You can see it's slightly doughy in there. You see that? When it's slightly doughy, that means it still has more baking time, but we got to remove the beans. The beans hold the shape. And to review, baking blind means you're baking the pie crust without the filling. And a lot of pies are like that, like cream pies and things like that. And this in particular, this beautiful pie. Now look, this is why I had excess parchment paper, because I'm going to lift up my beautiful beans. I'm going to come over to my bowl of beans, and watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to dump them back in. Okay? And if I have a bean that escaped, I'm going to make sure I watch where it went. I don't think one got in there. And what you want to do is you can still see it is not completely done. So we're going to go back in the oven for another 12 minutes. It may be a few more to make sure that we don't see that doughiness or that wetness. All right. Now, once my dough starts getting less wet looking and more cooked on the bottom, if any of the sides have slunk down, and sometimes that happens, take a little teaspoon and just push them back up, but make sure you do it when it's warm. All right. See you back here. I'm putting it back in the oven. So my dough is fresh out of the oven. My pâte sucrée, my chocolate sugar cookie crust is done. I've pushed up any spots while they were hot and soft with a spoon that came up the sides. Luckily, there wasn't that many. And I'm just going to let it sit for a minute while I tell you what we're going to put at the base of this to also prevent a soggy crust as well. So I have 1/3 cup of red raspberry jam. If you wanted to use seedless raspberry jam, you can, but I sort of like the seeds. I don't mind them. And while it's still a little warm, you can microwave the jam, but you can save yourself that step and it becomes more spreadable if you just put it into the warm crust. So I'm just going to put it down the length of the crust. All you want is a thin layer. All right, you don't want anything thick, 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 because we're going to have those beautiful fresh raspberries on top. And then you're going to take an offset spatula and just sort of spread it. And it spreads so beautifully when it's warm. It sort of melts down that jam. And if your jam is not that spreadable, you can always microwave it before, but this is like butter. It's melting beautifully. It just gives a nice little layer. And then we're going to put our beautiful rich chocolate filling. And again, so easy. Anybody can make this. Anybody, even somebody that's not a baker, you can do this. All right. So in the meantime, I have taken 1 cup of heavy cream. I brought it to a boil. I took it off the heat and I put in 1 3/4 cups of semi-sweet chocolate chips, high quality semi-sweet chocolate chips. And I stirred it until it melted and got into this loveliness. Oh, it's so good. All right, and I'm going to pour it over my beautiful crust. And you're going to pour up and down, and then you can spread it after. But just go slow, because again, your raspberry jam is nice and fluid. All right, we're just going to go straight up and down, and you're going to use the whole thing. The whole thing. Oh, it's just like fudgy and chocolatey. And it's just got all the fabulous flavors. Now, there's only heavy cream and chocolate in this ganache, and you've seen me make ganache many, many times. But if you wanted to add a little something, something, like some, maybe a tablespoon or a few teaspoons of Chambord, which is raspberry liqueur, feel free. That would be delicious. All right. This is for licking later. Oh, mine. All right, so now the topping, fresh raspberries. So we're going to put these raspberries on upside down. These are raspberries that are the freshest you can get, and they're the most perfect raspberries we can get. So choose what you want to do, and we're just going to put them right here. All right. Just gently put them on. Just choose any ones that'll fit. This was a big fat guy, so I'm going to move him over. And then you're going to chill this until the ganache gets nice and firm. So I'm going to show you what this looks like once this is all put together. All right, so I finished putting raspberries up and down this lovely tart. And then I chilled it so the ganache gets nice and solid. Because remember, chocolate has that cocoa butter in it, and it's solid when you chill it, and it's perfect. It's like fudge. So before I take it out of the pan, and it's a little tricky to get out of the pan, that's why I'm going to show you. I'm going to just dust a little bit of confectioner sugar over there. Look at how that highlights those beautiful raspberries. Just gorgeous. Oh, yes. Just beautiful. And I would keep this in the fridge. Keep it nice and chilled until you're ready to serve it. Lovely. Ooh, it's snowing on those raspberries. Now, I took some pasta boxes that are slightly less than the width of the bottom of these of this tart pan. And I'm going to put it on top. And this is how I usually unmold it. And it's a little shaky, so you want to hold it. And just let that bottom, remember the bottom's still on there. Here we go. Let it come off. Just go slow when you do this, okay? Slow for the big reveal. Oh yeah, baby. And then it just helps you get it off. And you're going to leave it on that metal bottom. Oh yeah, now that's what I call a chocolate raspberry tart. And I'm going to put it on my beautiful, lovely rectangular, beautiful platter. And there you have it. I am going to store this in the fridge. My pasta boxes work beautifully. And if you would like and you're going to someone's house, all you need to do is trace the bottom of this metal, the bottom of the tart pan in like a cardboard circle, not a cardboard cake circle, but a cardboard piece of cardboard, and just line it with a little bit of foil. And you can just say to your friend, look what I made you. It was nothing. It was nothing. And you just give it to her and you don't have to worry about getting the bottom back. So there you have it. My gorgeous, gorgeous, spectacular chocolate raspberry tart. Be a subscriber. I hope you make it. Hope you enjoy it. Till next time.